Okay, firstly, I'd like to thank you for meeting with me. If you could just tell me your full name, please,
Beryl Hyatt.
and your date of birth and place of birth, please.
1931, and I was born in the parish of St. Elizabeth in Jamaica, West Indies.
Can you describe your early childhood memories to me, please?
Oh, I remember where I was born, not very much. That's very vague because at the age of about a year, 18 months to 2 years, I left where I was born and went to another part of St. Elizabeth where I grew up with my stepmother and my father. That place was Hopewell, same St. Elizabeth. And I can remember the times I had. I left my two older sisters, a younger brother and a younger sister in Springfield, that part of St. Elizabeth. And I grew up with an older stepnephew, my stepmother, my grand-stepmother, and a lot of step-uncles and cousins, step-cousins, that were related on my stepmother's side. I had a very happy childhood there. I remember, I think I was the only youngest girl about at the time, and I was fussed over.
So, for clarification, how many people were in the household you were growing up with?
My dad, my stepmother, my grand-stepmother, if I can call her that, Uncle Lenny. He was living very near, adjacent. It was sort of his house, and there was like a fence dividing the house where I was, and he was living sort of, say, next door then. And it was Uncle Gerald. They call him Gerald, but his name was Jeremiah. They called him Uncle Gerald. Well, he was in the house where I was living, and with my stepmother and
So
dad.
these uncles weren't married with children or anything, were they?
No, he wasn't married, but he had a little boy, and he was a baby then when I was about maybe 3. I think I'm 3 to 4 years older than Charles, I think I am. And that was that household. But the family were very close, and there was a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins,
So
in the
these are
vicinity.
relatives through your stepmother's
Yes, through my stepmother's side. But all my mother's side of family and my dad's side were in Springfield, St. Elizabeth, where I was born.
So did you get to see them often or not? Or
Yes, we used to go to see them sometimes, maybe 3 months at a time. And there was my stepmother had a young brother, which was not her mother's child by the dad. And the mother died, and the father died. Their father died without knowing that boy. He was an outside child, illegitimate child. And the mother was very poor, so my stepmother took him. I think Jojo, he was about maybe 5 to 6 years older than I was. So I was like a little sister to him, And I grew up. Then we left St. Elizabeth and went to St. Mary. I think I was about 5 at the time when we went to St. Mary.
and what was the cause of this move?
Well, to be quite honest, I don't really know why we moved. When you're young and you're just being uprooted, you're just told we're gonna go. I think it was because my stepmother's sister She had spent many years in Spanish Honduras. And she had returned with a husband that she met there and married, and they came back to Jamaica. And she was living in St. Mary, residing in St. Mary. So, being just the two sisters, all the rest of the family were brothers in that family, in the Warren family. They were just the two sisters, and they were close. So that was the reason why we went off to St. Mary, which I didn't like, although I was young. I didn't like it. I didn't like St. Mary when I went there. It was far different from St. Elizabeth. You know, growing up, knowing everybody there and not knowing a lot of people in St. Mary. I remember being 5 and very young. You know, I used to cry a lot. You know, I had no friends. I didn't know anybody, just Jojo and me. And he being older than me and a boy, he, you know, he got to know friends as boys, playing toys and things. I was left sort of on my own as a little girl.
So who was actually in St. Mary with you? There was your...
Yes, my dad went at the time. My dad and my stepmother. But it was because of my step-aunt who was residing in St. Mary, because she left Spanish Honduras and came back to Jamaica. And her husband had a stepson, his son, in St. Mary. He had made, you know, settled down there. So my step-aunt husband, decided to settle there as well. And that was why we moved to St. Mary, you know.
So you schooled there?
Yeah, that's where I went to school. That's
what was that like?
It was nice when I grew up, went to school and had friends. And well, you know, your first day at school and children who are older than you seem to pick on you and things like that, just like what goes on here, you know. You're always intimidated by older ones. When you're a new child at school, everybody seems to want to take things from you, you know. If you have a pencil, because they're there before you, they want to take your pencil away from you or break your slate or whatever.
So what are you saying? Were you bullied in any way?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
But that was fairly normal?
Yes, it was. Everybody was, not just because it was me. Every new child, unless you could stand up for yourself. But because my, I'll call him my brother then, because he was to me like a brother. He was there, and you know, I could go. He would see me crying in the playground, and he would say, "What's the matter?" And I tell him, and he would go off and fight my battles for me.
This is Jojo.
Yeah, he would fight for me. So then children stopped picking on me because they knew I had an older brother and they were afraid of him. But my school days were lovely days, you know, when you wasn't being bullied by other children. And even though I grew up and there was always children all the time trying to bully you, especially if you were quiet, because I wasn't one for being into fight or love company or love. I was never one for playing rough. If I'm playing and it gets rough, I'm out of it.
So what did you enjoy doing as a child?
As a child, I used to enjoy reading. I think I started reading from a very early age. From about 5, I was always into books, even if I didn't know the words. You know, look at the picture and whatever words I could read, I read it, and what I didn't understand, I would always be asking. I was always a nosy child. Not nosy to want to know a people's business, but if I see something in that book and I see a picture, I would always want to know what the picture is trying to say, even if I couldn't read the words. You know, I was always like that. I had a curious mind. As a child. I remember my dad used to say to me, "You want to know everything." I was always like that. I used to love reading. My strong subjects at school was reading, I was not very good at geography. I loved history and scripture. And I was very good at English, like essay writing. I could make, if the teacher should say, write an imaginary journey on a train or on a plane. I've never been on a train, but I'd make up, something very good. I had an imaginative mind. I was like that. So I enjoyed my school days, enjoyed games. I was very good at running as well. We used to have relay races, and I was very good at that.
Was religion a part of your life at all at this stage?
Yes. My parents were very religious. They used to go to the Church of England. I think before we left St. Elizabeth, my father was a Presbyterian, and his parents, and my mother was Church of England. My stepmother was Church of England. So when I was in St. Elizabeth, we went to the Church of England church. Whenever we go to visit our family in Springfield, where I was born, we went to the Presbyterian church, which was just on the hill from where my grandparents were living. Mm-hmm. So we but it was Church of England really. And my grand stepmother and step uncles, except one, were Seventh-day Adventist, worshipping on a Saturday. I used to enjoy, before I went to St. Mary, every Friday evening, my uncle Lenny and Nana, I called her, she used to say to my mom, "Can Beryl come and worship with us on a Friday evening?" And my mom would say yes. So I used to go over Uncle Lenny's house and sit on the big veranda, and all those songs I used to sing, because I used to love to sing as well. So I learned all those songs, which were different from when I go to church on a Sunday with. But I never went to the Seventh-day Adventist church. My mom never let me go with my step-grandmother or my step-uncle to the Seventh-day Adventist church.
What age did you leave school, and what did you do after school?
I left school at 16, and then I went on to further education. I took exams, but I wasn't successful in passing any of them. I went up to doing the third year. That was the Jamaica, their method of education. You went, and it was the first year exams. I don't know what it's equivalent to in England here now, it wasn't the 11 plus. It was much higher than the 11 plus. And then you did a second year, which was much harder. There was more things involved. But it was an exam like you do for your GC and whatever here. It was those things, that was the standard of the education. Or you went on to a high school or another school. And I didn't go. I just stayed at the school where I started my education, and the head teacher used to take pupils that had left school and had evening classes for them, and then you sit the Jamaica exams, for the standards that you studied for. Mm-hmm. And they were first year, second year, third year. Like I said, I don't know what they're equivalent to these now, but they were higher education, and some children went on to colleges and things in Kingston or in other places. But I didn't go because my parents couldn't afford to let me go. So what I did was just go to evening classes, and at the same school I attended. and sat for exams, which, like I said before, I wasn't successful in passing any.
So what happened after that?
Well, I went and did sewing, dressmaking and things like that. And I went on to do a domestic science in Kingston, which I had a certificate for after completing, which involves cooking, learning to set tables, and like anything in doing entertainment.
Right.
Like they would ask you, like catering, and you'd go and, if someone is having a birthday party or a wedding, and you'd be able to do the tables and things like that. Yeah.
So you were in Kingston for how long? Did this mean moving away from home? Being
Yes.
Independent? Or?
Yeah, moving away from home, being independent in that my parents weren't there, but I had to stay with people who my parents knew, so I was sort of boarding, and they were responsible for my keep still. At that time I was about 17.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a strict upbringing?
Oh yes, very strict. I mean,
can you give an example?
My parents, they had a set time for you to come in. After we went to St. Mary and I grew up, they took my mother, took her mother. So, because she was old and it was just boys, the sons were still in St. Elizabeth, and the two daughters being up in St. Mary. So she got old and wasn't keeping very good health, so they took her up to St. Mary. And her eyes were getting dim, so she used to ask me to read for her. Now I was about 9, 10 now, 11. So I could read a lot, and she used to ask me to read for her. So the lessons that she had to study for the Sabbath, I would help her with it. And we got very, very close, my step-grandmother and me. And one day she asked my mother if I could go to church with her, because I said before, she being a Seventh-day Adventist. And I went with her, and I love the way they worship. Mm. So I asked if I could continue to go. She had a stroke then, after I was going with her for a time. So she couldn't able to go to church. So brethren from the church used to come down and have worship with her on a Saturday. And then I got so involved that I began to go to church. Then her eldest granddaughter was working in Spanish Town, and when the sicker she got, she needed more help now, because she had a stroke now and wasn't able to move about. So they sent for the eldest granddaughter in Spanish Town where she was working, and she came up, and they were having some series of meetings, and this well, I'll call her my cousin, she started going to the meetings, and I used to go with her. And she got baptized, and she was going to church regular now, so I started going to church. And my mother and dad, they were still going to the Sunday church. So I got really involved with the Seventh-day Adventist faith. Mm-hmm. And I think I was about 13 when I asked to be baptized. But they say I was too young. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't baptized at that age, but I still kept going to church. So I grew up with religion from the Sunday church, mm-hmm. and getting now more religion from the Seventh-day Adventist church, because I say...
Excuse me. Did you know that you leave the fire on 9 and the thing then burn up? I just woke it and look in the air.
Well, why bother? Oh, so I got more involved the Seventh-day Adventist faith, as I say. And the strictness of it was, children used to play about in the yard, or you're living near to the road, and the road is just there. And at evening, it's getting dark, you dare not go and stand out by, it's at your gate, but you dare not go and stand out there. They're so strict, they say you should be inside the yard because anything can happen to you out there, And they were strict in that. If you go out, you've got to be back inside that house at a certain time. And you were not allowed to go anywhere without someone older than you going with you, at that age. And if you should go to church in the evening for practice, if they were having a program and you were involved in it, an older person from the church had to take you home. You were not supposed to come home on your own, or your parents come to fetch you. It was like that. Yes, so they were very strict.
Can you take me to the events which led to you coming to this country?
Oh, I wanted to come to England when I was in my 20s, And they say, no, well, 19, 20, you're too young and you're going far away on your own, so.
Why did you want to come over?
Well, because at that time it was open for nursing, and I said I wanted to be a nurse when I was growing up. And they said I was too young then, so they sent my cousins before, because they were boys, Although they were younger than I was, they sent them because they were boys. They can, fend for themselves. And it wasn't until Jonathan, my husband, came. We went to the same church, and we were courting then, and he came, and he wanted me to come. After he came over, and I said I didn't want to, but eventually I came.
You say eventually. How long after your husband came?
He came in 1955. We weren't married then. When I came here, 1958, we got married. So he came 1955, and I came 1958. So say about 3 years after he came. We kept on saying I should come, it's better, and since I like nursing, I could get into nursing, and so I decided, and I come against my better judgment, and I really didn't want to, but I came, And
how did you travel?
By plane. Yes.
First time on a plane?
First time on a plane.
What was that like? Do you remember much about the journey?
I remember I was scared. I went to the airport, and after going through all the formalities and getting on the plane, and I remember going up on the plane and sitting down, but fastening your seatbelt and everything like that. I remember when the plane was ready to take off, I just closed my eyes and I was saying a prayer. And I remember after, I was sort of, there was a sick feeling with the plane going up, being the first time. There was a girl sitting beside me who I didn't know, and she held my hand and she said to me, it will be all right, I'm scared as well. But when the plane, I remember I was got the sick feeling about me because we had some turbulence, and I wanted to be sick on the journey. But afterward, I think I slept most of the time.
So the plane left Kingston?
Yes.
And it arrived?
We left on a Friday. I think it was an afternoon flight, about a 1 o'clock flight. and we landed early Saturday morning
Where?
at, I think it was Gatwick. I can't be sure now. I think it was Gatwick. I don't think Heathrow was open yet.
Right.
Yeah,
And
because
what did you see when you got out? What were your first impressions?
oh, it was raining, and it was just fog. I remember us traveling. After we got out, it was fog, and then I think we went by coach from Gatwick to Euston, for them to put us on, get everybody on the train where people, because some were going to Sheffield, some were going to different places, and they took us and told us the platform we were supposed to, who were coming to Birmingham and Wolverhampton and Coventry, so everybody just showed us where we were to go, and we got our tickets and got on the train. But then I remember it was a very, very foggy day, and it was in July. And it wasn't cold, it was just mild, but there was no sun. And I remember sitting on the train because there were some people coming to Birmingham, and we were all, people who were in the same coach, were all talking about how different it was. And in July, I wasn't cold, but there was no sun, and it was very, very gloomy, very dismal. I remember the day. It was a Saturday as well. And I remember sitting there and thinking, well, if I was in Jamaica, I would be at church, And then we got into, I think, there at Wolverhampton station, it was high level and low level. To be quite honest, I can't remember now which of the levels the train used to come in on and which of the levels it would go out from to London. But I remember coming off and getting a taxi and coming to Prosser Street, where Jonathan was living at the time.
Whereabouts is Prosser Street?
Sorry?
Whereabouts is Prosser Street?
94 Prosser Street.
What area is that of town?
That's down Park Village.
Park Village, okay.
Yes. You don't know that area at all?
I have an idea.
It's off the Cannock Road. Yeah. Yes. There. So Prosser Street, that was my first address when I came to England. And I remember the taxi taking me, and it turned up that street, and I could see, well, coming along from Wolverhampton up there, you could see all the houses, because everywhere was different. Driving along, all the houses, they just, like that, in rows. And the smoke coming out of the chimneys, and I thought, oh, this is funny. I thought, well, there must be a lot of people working here, I thought they were all factories. You see some people standing at the door, and the road is there, and they just step up into the house. It looks so funny, strange. And when the taxi turned up Prosser Street, and he said, dropped me at 94. And I thought, now where do I go? And he said, you can't, it's no use knocking at the front door there, he said to me. There's the passage, and you have to go around, and you will get you will see it at the back. You'll see 94 at the back.
Why is there no point knocking at the front, sorry?
Because people used to occupy the front room for living in. It was an Indian house, and they occupied the front room, and the tenants occupied the other rooms. So he said you couldn't knock there, and because accommodation was very bad in those days, For you to get somewhere to live, it would either be a West Indian family who had bought a house, but it was mostly the English people, they didn't want to have let's put it then, black people living. It was very, very, very rare. There were black people living in an English person's house in those days. So that was my first address, Prosser Street. And I remember thinking, if I could just get back on the plane and go back to Jamaica. That was the first evening. And
Okay.
you have a question for me?
Okay. So you met up with your partner at the time,
Yeah.
and you married.
You mean when I came to England?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
but I knew him from Jamaica.
Yeah.
Yes, we got married. I came up the July and we got married the September 58. Yeah.
Was that, what kind of service was that?
It was a church service. We got married at the Holy Trinity in Heath Town. It wasn't a big wedding, but we had photographs and things like that, and just a very small reception because I wasn't working. I'd just come up, and he didn't have a lot of money for a big wedding, but our family and friends were there, on the side of my stepmother, she had her youngest brother, my stepmother's youngest brother, that is my step uncle. He was in the country at the time. He was at the wedding, and her niece and nephew, that is the Uncle Byron, who was in the country at the time, his two children. So they were at the wedding, and a cousin from my dad's side, he was in England as well, and he was at the wedding. So it was sad that my parents weren't here, but nor his parents. But it was a lovely little wedding,
Did in other areas, living in Wolverhampton, coming from Jamaica to a new and foreign land, were there any difficulties in any specific areas?
Yes, the difficulty was the living situation and the communication with the English people. They seem to think once they've met a West Indian person, they're all the same. So if you should go into a shop, I found it quite embarrassing. And one day I remember the incident. He and I went into he knew what he wanted in the chemist. So he went straight to get what he wanted. I was just looking around, I didn't go up to the counter. And one of the assistants in the shop, she moved from where she was and came and was fiddling around with something, as if she was tidying up somewhere. And I just looked across at her and I just walked out of the shop. Because I'm not used to that, because I don't want anything to steal. I wasn't even handling anything, I was just looking, looking on the things. And then while he was there, maybe she thought I was going to shoplift. I don't know. So I was that sensitive, so I just walked out of the chemist and went and stood outside. And immediately as I walked out, I looked back and she moved and went back around the counter, so...
So was this a common occurrence in shops?
Yes, where black people were concerned. If you go into a shop and if you were looking at anything on the rocks and on the clothes, they would suddenly just come. And I wasn't used to those things in Jamaica. If I go into a shop, there was nobody coming over my shoulder, so I just walked out, and he got annoyed. He said, "What did you want to do that for?" And I said, "Well, I was just standing there." I said, "I didn't even pick anything up, you know." And immediately and I said, as soon as I just looked at her and walked out of the shop, of the chemist, she went back around the counter. I said, she came fiddling with the things. So when I went out, if there was something that I wanted and I didn't see it, if I looked and I didn't see it, I usually just go straight to them and said, "Have you got so and so?" Or sometimes even before I go and look, I usually go to the assistant and said, "Excuse me, do you stock so and so?" You know, and he said to me, "Oh, well, you'll have to put up with all of it." Well, I said, "Well, until I get used to it, you know." I'll just, if I go
How
into
long
it.
did it carry on for?
Well, it went on for maybe a few months, you know, if I happened to go into it. It wasn't every shop.
Right.
It wasn't every shop. I didn't experience it with every shop, but there were some that I think was more prejudiced than others, you know, and the staff were just like that. I didn't know of any, maybe people were shoplifting, their own people or immigrants, you know, I don't know. But I used to go on the market as well, and they had the thing with the queue. You have to be in a queue. And sometimes you go in and you join the queue, and others will just come, and the people are standing there and they can see you in the queue. And
What others?
Sorry?
What others? Other English people? Other
Yeah.
Caribbean people?
No, English people. They're the ones that made the rule for queuing,
Yeah.
right? And they themselves would come, and because you're black, they just go in front of you, or they just come sideways and ask to be served. And like I say, I'm a very sensitive person, and I used to just move away. I never argue with any of them and say, "Well, you made the rules." I just look at them and I just move away and go to another place and get what I want. I would never, I just grew up knowing that I was taught to be a mannerly person. And I didn't have to come to England to develop any principles. I had them in me from I was growing up. So coming to England for me is an experience, but not an experience where I had to be taught how to act, how to speak, and or how to behave, because I knew that from I was growing up. So when I used to see people, you know, act ignorantly, I never used to retaliate. I just move away, you know.
How did it make you feel?
It used to make me feel very small. It used to make me feel, because I can't stand rudeness. I don't like people being rude. Now, if I go into a place, I try to control myself, you know, if I'm going to get angry. I can be angry and I don't have to shout. I can just say something to you and you can know that I'm upset. But I don't have to shout or make you feel, you know, very small.
Were you able to understand or make some kind of sense of why these things were happening?
Yeah, I knew that it was because we were immigrants and they had a problem. I don't think the problem stemmed really from us, because people coming here, they came for a reason. They came to work, and some people came that they would work so much and go back, because life for some people were hard, not everybody. Life wasn't really hard for me. My parents weren't rich, but you know, I was brought up not wanting a lot of things. Like some people were, a lot of people were very, very poor. But I had adequate food, adequate clothes, a home, a nice home. And if it wasn't because, say, I wanted to be a nurse and it was easier to get into nursing here, I wouldn't have come to England at all. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have come. And my husband, I don't think he really needed to come to England because he had a trade. Mm-hmm. He was a bricklayer and plasterer. He worked for a man that was a contractor. Bless you.
Excuse me.
And he was his foreman, and he had a big farm where he had his food that people who were buying and selling go to the market, came and buy from him. And he had some cows, so he didn't really need to come. But when people are young, they just want to experience. And my cousin and him were very good friends, and my cousin came to England and said he was to come. I advised him not to, but he came. So I because he was plaguing me to come, I come, but I didn't really want to come, But I came, and it was cold. I can remember 1958, it wasn't, I don't remember seeing the sun for more than about 3 days. It was so far between seeing the sun,
And this was July.
Yes, and that was July, August. And when the winter came, oh wow. I just wanted to go home, and I went back home. I went back 60 April. Mm-hmm. And I spent 18 months. Mm-hmm. Then I had 2 children then. Because I had, Cheryl was born in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. She was my first child before we were married. And then after I got pregnant with Orette, after we got married. Mm-hmm. So I went back to Jamaica and had Orette, the one that's now dead, had her in Jamaica. And I didn't want to come back. He kept on at me to come back. And I didn't want to. But his brother, I asked him to send for his brother. And his brother and I, we got on very well, we were very close. And he said, come back. And he kept on at me. So I came back with the 2 children. And I think that's the biggest mistake I've ever made, coming back with them, because I want to go back to Jamaica now. And, I just can't. I go back on holidays, but I'd like to go back to live.
So when you say you really you say that it was a mistake coming back here, do you really regret it?
Yes, I have.
Why?
I have regretted it in that, although I had the family, but I would rather have been in Jamaica, having my children, having all that sunshine, getting all that good food, and I think I would have been much, much happier. It hasn't all been bad, because I've made a lot of friends, and I've seen the children grow up and become, independent, and having the grandchildren and things like that. It could have happened anyway. But I think, although I said I have regretted it, and it was a big mistake, I think that being in England, I've gained a lot of experiences. I've learned to live I think I can live with anybody now, I've been on holidays to other places, to America, to Tenerife. Where have I been again? I've been on holidays in other parts in England. I've seen a lot of things. I've been to Tunisia on holiday. I've seen a lot of different ways of life in which people have had to cope. I think that coming to England, in as much I have not realized everything that I would have liked to. But it's an experience, and in as much as I would rather have stayed in Jamaica, and I've had a lot of regrets being in England, I think I can say I'm glad in a way, I did come. Because if I should go back to Jamaica, Jamaica's changed tremendously. Much different from when I was growing up. But I can cope, because I think to myself, if I can come to England where I didn't know anybody, everything was so different. I had to get used to life all over again. And I go back to Jamaica. That's my birthplace, in as much as it has changed. I can still live. When I go on holiday, I'm telling you this, I am so carefree. It's just as if I hadn't left. Because I can just pick up like that and start living my life again the way I used to. I mean, it's different now. I wouldn't be able to do, the way of life out there has changed, even in the district which I grew up.
You say when you go on holiday to Jamaica, you're so carefree.
Yeah.
So does that imply that you're not able to be that carefree in Britain?
No, not as I would like to, because it's a way of life that you can't do the things that you can do in Jamaica, you know, like for instance, opening all your doors, you know. And I go to Jamaica, everywhere's open, the windows are open, everywhere's just open. I don't have to put a coat on. There's no central heating. I'm not cold. You know, everything's just fresh. Lovely wind. I can sit under the tree, and I'm so happy. I'm never happy in England. I make do, but I'm not happy. But every time when I go back to Jamaica, I'm happy. I'm happy.
Can you talk a little about the changes that happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s over time, how people have changed?
When we came here, the market, it used to be, I think it's right, it was a technical college, and then the market was going down to where the new civic center is now. It was that cobbled street, and the market was there. And the only thing you could get the vegetables and the fruits. But our food, there was none. It was potato or rice. Every day eating potato. It was bad.
So how did you cope? What did you buy instead?
We just had to cope, and I was never one for eating flour with dumplings, you know, things like that. In as much as I grew up out in Jamaica, it was green bananas for me, or yam, or breadfruit, and I couldn't get that. Not that I pined after it, I made do, because I'm always a person like this. Even if I like certain food, and I can't have it, I have to eat.
Sure.
So I will make do. And that, since that was the food here, I had to eat it, but not that I enjoyed it. And he used to want me to experiment the different food. And I remember the first evening that he said, would you like some chips? Chips, you know. And he brought some chips and fish. The fish was horrible. No, fish. I didn't eat it. But I ate some of it. It was so oily, you know.
Was that new? You weren't used to greasy food?
No. We fried, but our food wasn't greasy, you know. Didn't like it. Like I said, the market was where the civic center is now, and all you could get. Now, I didn't mind the cabbage and things like that, but getting used to the other things, parsnip and all of those other things, you know, it was strange, the food. But we coped, and There was.
May I ask a question?
Okay, you were talking about changes in Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
Could you direct them more about, I suppose, people, as opposed to things? Physical changes, more about, I suppose, people, integration, race relations.
Oh yeah. At when I came to Wolverhampton, there were very few friendly English people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a problem with people not wanting to be friends with me. I didn't have a problem with that, because at Prosser Street I used to walk down the street for the short time we lived there, and these old people, they would say hello, you know. There's a neighbor when we lived at 44, and she said to me, "Are you English? Are you Irish?" The first day I went out into the garden. And I said, "No." I said, "I'm from Jamaica." And she said, "Oh, no, you're not." And I thought, what is she saying? "Oh, no, I'm not." I said, "I am from Jamaica." And she said, "Oh." And I said, "Why do you say I'm not from Jamaica?" And she said to me, "Well, I've met a lot of people who say they're from Jamaica, and they're not your color, and I can't understand them when they speak. But you speak proper English. Where did you learn to speak English?" And I said, "In Jamaica at school." And she just shook her head. She was surprised. And I used to walk down the street at Prosser Street, and they would say, "Hello, nasty morning," if it was raining, and couldn't understand what they were on about. And it's a lovely day. Used to look at me as if I'm crazy, because if it's raining and they say a nasty day, couldn't understand what they were all about. I found that people were very helpful, you know. Well, that's my experience. I didn't have a problem with, other than the experience I've told you about going into the chemist. But I never found, and forming queues, I never find a problem with people, you know, being nasty to me in any way. Even if they had it in the mind, it wasn't shown to me. So I didn't have a problem with that. People were always helpful. If they should see you standing and they feel that you didn't know where to go or so, they would say, "Are you lost there?" or "You need any help there?" I found that. I didn't find them, you know, being rude or nasty in any way, other than those two experiences when I just came here. When I came back 1960, I lived in Wensfield at my cousin's house. And the neighbors were very, very nice that were there. It was all those terraced houses. You had to walk around the back to get in. And I found the people who were living there, they asked me the same question: "Are you Irish?" In Wensfield when I came back 1960. And I said, "No, I'm from Jamaica." And they were taken aback and said, "Oh, you don't look like a Jamaican." I thought to myself, well, what do Jamaicans look like, you know? But I didn't say it to them. And when I answered them in any way, they always say to me, Did you learn to speak English since you've come here?" And I said, "No." They were so amazed, you know, that I could speak proper English, that they could understand. If I was going on the bus with the children, they would always make much of the children, play with them, even give them money.
Why was that? Why do you think that was?
Well, I just put it down to that they were just being friendly,
Yeah.
you know. I didn't find people being nasty to me, to be quite honest. I didn't find it at all. People used to come with experiences about, you know, people like that, but I didn't find it. If I went on the bus, people used, a man would get up, an Englishman, he would say, "You have a seat there," you know, like that. So, you know, and with Jonathan as well, when he came here, he said he made a lot of friends, especially amongst the Irish men. You know, they were very friendly and nice. So there's been a lot of changes in Wolverhampton, in that I think they have come to accept the black, or they would call us the minority, ethnic minority, a lot more now, because they have done so much for the society in which they've lived. And even amongst the West Indians, they have got integrated into a lot of things. They have made themselves known that, well, we're here and we're not moving, you know, and we are a part of the community whether you like it or not. So they have just made their voice being heard. They have contributed financially to the community, because Wolverhampton was such a dead, boring place. When we first came here, there wasn't a lot of furniture shops. After, when more immigrants came, you know, they wanted more furniture. They weren't satisfied with the little second-hand rubbish that they had. So more stores were open for furniture, and they were just selling, because people, as soon as they, you know, had a house, people were buying that instead of living. The living condition was so bad that there were maybe 6 to a room or things like that. So people were going out and trying to get their own houses. So they wanted to furnish it nicely, because they were used to, some of them were used to nice furniture in Jamaica. You see, so that was it. So Wolverhampton has changed a lot, and I am glad that, in as much as if I would rather have been in Jamaica, I'm glad that I have stayed here for this long to see how much it has improved, you know, and that immigrants have settled, have made a life for themselves, and become very, very independent, and can fight their own battles now, you know, and have people that are on their side, you know, and looking out for their welfare, and to see that, you know, they are not left out in any way, you know.
So, would you say, do people of ethnic minority, of different origins, minority origins, do they belong to Wolverhampton now?
I think they do. And if in my mind I was settled and wanted to stay, I could lift my hand and say yes. I myself, I'm a part of Wolverhampton, you know.
So what does this mean to you in terms of, I mean, I can see your grandchildren sitting over there.
Yeah.
What kind of hope do you have for them and their future in a place like Wolverhampton?
Well, I can see a lot of hope for them. It's only if they should grow up and don't want to stay in Wolverhampton. But at this present time, I can see educationally they are trying to improve on a lot of things, and a lot of issues are being raised. I can see where the government is fully understanding that there are a lot of the ethnic minority that have made their homes here, and they're trying their best to make everybody feel at home. I can see that. They might not be doing it in the way that a lot of us would want them to do it, but they're still doing something. And if anything is going on, and you get to find out about it, you might have a lot of difficulties in getting some of it. But at the end, if you're persuasive enough, you will get there and get some of the benefits that the others are getting as well. And for my grandchildren, I can see hope for them in that, where if they should live, the world should last that long, and they grow up, there will be a job for them here or in England, you know, for them, and they will be recognized, you know. The only problem that I find, not so much with the English, but amongst us as the ethnic minority, but we are always trying to put each other down, not trying to help each other as we should, you know. We don't sort of look out for each other in the way that we should. We're always trying to, if I should know about something, I would just go and get it for myself and wouldn't want to say to my Jamaicans, you know, so and so, you can get help from that direction. You know, I would just keep it to myself. And I don't think that's right. I think we should be here for one another.
Okay. Finally, and to round off, what do you think has been your contribution to Wolverhampton?
I don't know if I have contributed much, but because of my religious beliefs, I think I've contributed in that I have been into the community trying to tell people of a better way of life. I have been involved in community service work. I have been a part of the community in that I have worked at the Institute for the Blind, where I think, just not because I was receiving a wage, but I have contributed of myself, a part of myself, in helping people, you know. If I should go and do voluntary work, which I have done, I would not be thinking about being paid. I would just be thinking that I could help someone, you know. If giving an encouraging word, helping wherever I can to make the last days that they have being comfortable and pleasant, you know. So I think in that way, in as much as I haven't been a teacher or a doctor or a nurse, but working in a caring profession, I have given of myself. Not just because I was receiving a wages, because you can go out to work, receive a wage, and be a horrible person, you know. But when I go out to work, I don't think of what I'm going to get at the end of the week. It's important. I think of how I am to another human being. And in my simple way, I think I've contributed. Bringing up my children, teaching them the right principles, and helping them to grow and to feel that don't care what color they are somebody in their own right. You know, I've never, when my children used to come, especially the eldest, and she used to say, "Oh, Mom, they're saying, wog go home." And she, what is this wog? She used to say to me. And I used to explain to her what they meant. And she said to me one day, "I don't like being called names." And I sat her down. She was about 9, 10. And I said to her, "Your name is Cheryl Hyatt. You're my daughter. You're going to school. You're trying to get an education to help yourself in life. And you're no less a person than anybody else. You think of yourself as good as the queen that is sitting on the throne." And I said, "I want you to believe in yourself and don't care what you're being called. When they call you wog, you say, 'I'm not a wog. I'm a person. and my name is Cheryl Hyatt, and I'm going to be somebody. And she put that in her head, and I didn't have to say anything more to her. And she grew up, and she can live with the best. And you know, not boasting, but Cheryl has got more English friends than West Indian friends. And she can live with anybody. And every day she looked at me and she said, Mom, thank you for saying that to me and for letting me believe in myself and not letting anyone put me down, thinking for me to think that I'm a person than anybody else. I said to her. She's grown up and she can go anywhere. She likes to travel, and she travels the amount of places she's traveled. One of my daughters is now in Alaska on her holiday, and she's loving it. So I just like to instill within them, you know, that they are a person in their own right. And I have never felt that my child is better than another person's child. When I see a child out there that is not acting the right way that they should, I think of it could have been my child, right? And I know nowadays you can't speak to children because, you know, they are vicious and it's all violence, and they're very rude. But I just pity that mother, you know, and look at that child as my child. And I feel very badly for that child in as much to say how rude they are behaving, you know, and have no respect for the elders. And I feel sorry for the children who have grown up not identifying, you know, even if they are not in a very big job and earning a big wage, but they should be able to identify, to know that wherever they're coming from, they're somebody like anybody else, you know. And I feel sorry for them, because sometimes they seem to put the blame on a lot of things. Oh, it's because I'm black. It's got nothing to do with it. It's just the mind that you have, you know. My teacher when I was at school, he was the head teacher. And I will never forget, you know, he taught us a lot about being a person and having a mind to be something and to be somebody. And the verse he used to say to us, he used to say, it's not the color of the skin. And I hadn't traveled. I was just at school then. I didn't know anywhere but Jamaica. And he used to say, it's not the color of the skin. It's not the blood of kith or kin, but it's the true heart that beats within that makes a man and brother. And I've never forgotten that, you know. And he used to tell us, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man. So when you can identify with who you are and what you want to be, there won't be any problem. There won't be a chip on your shoulder. You won't think, well, because I'm black, and don't strive. Try, and when you strive and you don't succeed, then you just don't succeed, but don't sit there and don't try, you know. And I pity the young people who just give up at the first obstacle they come upon and feel, oh, well, I'm black and the teacher don't like me. My first daughter, she went through hell at Woden Road School with the teacher. She humiliated her and she did her all manner. She didn't come home and complain to me. You know, it was her English friend who told me what the teacher did to Cheryl. And Cheryl begged me, she said, Mom, don't go up there. I will succeed, she said to me. And she did. I remember the morning when she came home and we were at home and her 11 plus came and she knew the envelope because it was written with whatever it was on the top. And she ran upstairs and she said, Mom, please open it. I would like to know. And I opened it and I looked at it And I folded it back. And she was just there, jumping up, Mom, please. And I said, Cheryl, I've been telling you won't pay attention at school. And she said, Mom, have I passed? And I said, yes, you've passed your 11 plus. And she just jumped and yelled. And she said to me, I bet Miss Dewhurst, that was a teacher, I bet Miss Dewhurst is pissing her pants. And when she realized what you said, she put her hand over, she said, oh, I'm ever so sorry, Mom. But I have felt proud within myself, not proud because my children have become something, but I felt fulfilled that they have looked within themselves. They have not given up because they have grown up in a society just like any other West Indian parentage that I've seen just gone to drugs and to, a way of life that isn't right. And I think it's just because they just couldn't identify with who they are, and they just had a chip on the shoulder about being black. And I told my children, don't you go having a problem with the color that you are. Because the white people don't have a problem with the color they are. So why should you?
Quite true.
Yes.
Do you want to say one last final thing, Mrs. Hyatt?
Well, I would like to say, in as much as I've said before, I regretted coming to England, I'll say again, I'm glad that I did come. In as much as life hasn't turned out as I wanted it to be, but for the experiences that I've gained, I know that I can go anywhere if God should so want me to go and live. Because if I have lived in England and lived here for 40 odd years, I can go anywhere and live.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences with me.
Thank you.